Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mel V, coming to you live from our new base in Portugal. It is great to be back with you here on Conscious Consumer Network. Tonight is our scheduled broadcast of Stop South African Genocide, and of course we are joined by my co-host Karin Smith and our guest Jack Miller from the Cape Party. So big hello, Karin and Jack.
Hi, Mel. Nice to see you again. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Karin. Hi, Mel.
Okay, well, we're going to get started this evening with diving straight into what's been going on in South Africa. So, Karin, I'm going to let you sweep it away and get started with the little intro.
Okay, great. Jack, you started the Cape Party, but I want to go into the before you started the Cape Party and why you started the Cape Party, because you're the same age as my daughter. Exactly. And you were almost a born free, not quite. But by the time you were born, the dreaded apartheid system was winding down, had wound down, literally. And by the time you were conscious of very much happening in the country, you were, 12 years old or so when the ANC took over. So what interested you in politics? I understand it from our point of view because we lived through apartheid. We lived through the war. We had brothers, sons, fathers in the war. But you didn't. You're essentially an almost born free. So what got you into seeing whatever you saw in South Africa and wanting to change it?
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that was quite politically conscious as well as historically conscious. And I think the two go hand in hand. I think if you understand history, if you understand the past, you understand where we are today. And when you look at how South Africa was formed, you look at the various political systems, the reasons for it, it becomes obvious that Cape independence is, I believe, not just the best route for the Cape, but I think it's inevitable. And not just the Cape, but I also believe that the other regions within South Africa, I mean, it's literally, South Africa is one of the most artificial countries you could even dream up. You know, the fact that we've got these two massive holes in the country that are independent countries, Lesotho and Swaziland. And the reason they call Lesotho and Swaziland is because Lesotho's majority Sotho speakers, Swaziland's majority Swazi speakers. And, the remaining territories were all independent prior to 1910. So yeah, I'm getting stuck into why the Cape should be independent. You asked me how I got into it. Well, it's just understanding these things. It just becomes so obvious when you know your history and you have a little bit of political interest, a little bit of economic interest. I've traveled to many places around the world. I've traveled to Switzerland. I've traveled to Singapore. I've seen the way these countries work. These countries, Singapore, for example, Hong Kong also, where they were once colonial. They suffered under colonialism, and look at them today. They're fantastic countries. They don't have any racial chips on their shoulders. They just get on with life and everyone benefits. So I think when I was 18, I actually wanted to get into the film industry. I do some work in the film industry currently, but I wanted to get into advertising. And a company, I suppose I shouldn't say the name, but anyway, a company came to my school and said that we'd like to interview students who would be interested in potentially getting a job at our company. So I put my name out. I put my hand up in the hall. I went forward to the teacher and put my name down. And a few weeks passed. I went back to him and I said, look, I'm really excited. I want to get into the film industry. Tell me, what's happening? What response have you got? And they said, Jack, look, I'm really sorry, but they're not interested. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, all I want is an interview. Yeah, maybe I'll be good, maybe I won't, just interview me. And he said, Jack, I'm sorry, you're the wrong color. And so that was when I was 18. I was just, leaving, obviously coming towards the end of my school career, and planning my future ahead as a young person. And it really dawned on me, being politically interested, reading newspapers and things like that. That was the first time where I was like, wait a second, this is not just something I'm reading in the newspaper. This is going to affect my life from here on out. And that concerned me, and I felt like I needed to do something. So after I finished my studies at UCT, I then began the process of forming the Cape Party, which was formed in 2007. And we've been going for 10 years now. So that's how it all began.
So, Jack, did you find, when you were at school and at university, did you find the same problems that are being experienced today, that it was very hard to get into university because of the color of your skin, that you were discriminated against possibly at university, or had that not come into full force when you were there?
It was certainly there. I know some friends who got some fantastic grades, but they weren't accepted into res. They had to go through a different route. And then when I got to UCT, it was, the hostility was very prevalent. I remember one of the very first lecture halls we went into. The lecturer basically had a full-on attack on the school that I used to go to. It was a good school. So, but there was an attack against. It was very politicized. And so it was certainly prevalent when I was there. I can't say it's anywhere near what it is now. I mean, I've seen footage. I've spoken to people who were there. The Roads Must Fall movements, the Fees Must Fall movements. I don't know if you heard that sound clip of the one Fees Must Fall student in Wits, where the executive of the Fees Must Fall had a discussion in which they said the only way that we can get our message across to the Chancellor Habib is that we need to kill one white student. And you've seen footage of stones being thrown, real like racially inflammatory stuff. And this leads into the court case that we just had last week, where we took the South African National Art Gallery to court over, they call it art, but it's basically just a poster that has 3 words in it.
Yeah.
F-U-C-K, white and people. Just repeated over and over and over. F white people, F white people, F white people. This is in a national gallery, and there were complaints pouring in. And
the court found that it was not hate speech, it was art.
The court found that it wasn't hate speech. And we took them to court, so we had all the court documents. And I mean, the response that he gave was unbelievable. We could not even see eye to eye on what the word F-U-C-K meant. He basically, we gave it. Look, I mean,
depends on what the definition of is, huh? that kind of thing. Wow.
Exactly. And so we used perhaps the hallmark of the English language. We used the Oxford English Dictionary, and we said, look, there are a number of meanings for it, but here are the various meanings. And we all know it's extremely offensive and an insult and defamatory. So he said, no, the word F-U-C-K means something different in South Africa, and white people doesn't actually mean white people. It actually means whiteness, which is a representation of systems of oppression. So it was a political circus.
Wow, I read all about that in the last couple of weeks, and I'm stunned. I mean, we all expect discrimination against whites in South Africa. We do not expect the courts to take our side. in anything that we do. I mean, I look at all the cases that are going against hate speech. Now, hate speech against whites, threatening to kill, murder, rape, put your baby in the oven, etc. Those are perfectly okay on Facebook, in the courts. There's a whole list that I think it's Front National are taking to the South African Human Rights Court about hate speech on Facebook. But it's been done before and nothing comes of it. But this particular one that you are talking about is horrific because it is plain and in your face what they are saying. And yet it's art. It's art. Yeah. But the picture of Zuma's big penis, that's not acceptable art. And that is an African art statement, is it not? If you look at African art from hundreds of years ago, it's a huge manly thing. They portray you with this massive member, and yet when it's done about Zuma, it is offensive and not art. So none of it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a large reason why we decided to take this matter to the courts was to literally put this to the test to see where exactly is our judiciary, and we know what the results should have been, but there was a little part of me that kind of thought, surely not, but the situation is pretty bad. And you know what, after the result, I was like, you know what, actually, thank you. This just shows how unbelievably biased the system is, that any judge could come to this conclusion on such a simple matter, especially considering the precedents that have been held in South Africa before. I mean, you had two Stellenbosch students dressing up as one was two aliens, so that was purple paint, and the media was up in storm saying they should be expelled because that's racist. The other was two students dressing up as Venus and Serena Williams. And they said that was racist and wanted them expelled. I mean, the media firestorm over things like that. And I mean, one of my favorite movies when I was younger was it's this comedy with the Wayans brothers called White Chicks. And it's two very funny black comedians who dress up as these white chicks. And it's about all the sort of funny stories that they sort of, end up in. And it's like, I mean, what's going on here? There's such a hypersensitivity and a dark desire to attack at every possible corner. And I think that for me is just like the perfect example where, the Marlon brothers in America can make a hilarious movie dressed up as white people, making jokes about, white tendencies. Whereas in South Africa, two students dressing up as aliens or tennis superstars will be called racist. So it's bad. It's really bad in this country.
But it's not just that, is it, Jack? I mean, I've been looking this year, literally, at the increased farm attacks, farm murders, urban murders, the riots, protests. It has become a daily horror show. Now for me, it's really hard for me every day to immerse myself in that stuff in order to be able to talk about it and comment on it. I have to know what's going on. But it is becoming harder by the day. And yet I see that South Africans have become so another day, another murder, another torture, another death. There's very little outrage anymore. There is outrage, but very little anymore. It's kind of, well, it wasn't me. It wasn't my mom today. It might be tomorrow, but it isn't today. Now, my question about that is, what does the Cape Party think that they can do about that, having taken such an open and shut case to court and lost? How do you think you can make a difference in the absolute blatant hatred of whites and the terrible way in which these blacks torture them to death?
Yeah, well, look, you've raised a few points there. how do we address this? Well, as I said, Cape independence is our primary call because the Cape's my home, and this is where I see the problems emerging all around me, but I'm fully aware of the problems in the rest of the country, and our solution is not just a solution to for the Cape to become a better place, but it's a solution for the whole of South Africa, and not only the situation is such that the resources available are being parasitically consumed by the state at such a rate that it's creating such unrest within society across different ethnic groups, including blacks. You're right. What doesn't get the attention that it deserves is the brutal murder of white farmers. You never see those images in the newspaper. But similarly so, the images you do see in the newspaper is of so-called xenophobic attacks, which is essentially just blatant racism as well, where you've got people coming in here from other parts of Africa who are just to find work. And, these people end up with rubber tires around them, burnt to death. There is such a... the fabric of South Africa is just starting to tear to such a degree that it's not just a white-black issue. It's a Xhosa Zulu issue. It's a Zimbabwe, Malawi, Nigeria, South African issue. There are a number of different problems here, and the core of the issue is, this is the thing at the Cape Party. It's not, race is not the issue here at all. It's the political system. We see race as having been a byproduct of the political system that was put in place in 1910. So yes, we're against the ANC regime, but we're also against the apartheid government, but primarily we're against the British Empire, which forced us into the Union of South Africa in 1910, took independent regions, ethnic groups that had been warring for centuries. You look at the conflict between the Xhosas and the Zulus. You look at the formation of Lesotho, which was a result of the Imfakane under Shaka Zulu and Mzilikazi. Up to 2 million black lives lost. You try and take this complex history and force it into one political entity, and you centralize those powers into one house in Pretoria, and those levers of power are either controlled by the British Empire from 1910 to 1948, or the Vaal Nats from 1948 to 1994, or now the ANC regime from 1994 to today. And you see that the common thread is that those levers of power are used in the exact same way by each of those government figures. So we're saying, guys, wake up. It's not about black. It's not about white. It's not about Xhosa. It's not about Zulu. It's the system. We're never going to get out of this. It's going to continue forever if we stay in this political system. So that's what the Cape Party's message is to devolve power down to local communities. And I've got complete respect for different cultures and different identities. And, if Jacob Zuma wants to, be the president of KwaZulu-Natal and impose those types of policies there, absolutely fine. Absolutely no problem with that. However, in the Cape, we've got a different value system, a different way of doing things, and a one-size-fits-all does not work. So our model for the Cape Republic is a model that I would promote in other parts of South Africa. We've been approached by the Abatembu tribe in the Eastern Cape. We support them. We've been approached by some members of the Zulu royal houses who are promoting an independent KwaZulu-Natal. And there are a number of groups around in which pushing for tribal autonomy. And that's what Lesotho is, and that's what Swaziland is. And I think we need to address the core issue, which is South Africa itself, which is not even the name of a country. It's just a geographical location that we were given by the British. Where are we? We're in Africa. down at the bottom, well, let's just call it South Africa.
So would you then divide the country into different countries? Would you go back to Zululand for the Zulus, Vendaland for the Venda, or what is the overall picture of this?
There's a few ways we could do it. Right now, our stance is to sit down and have peaceful negotiations with those in power and say, listen, we're not happy here in the Cape. The system's not working. We're being taxed to death. These racial policies discriminate against 70% of our population, and we don't like it. And listen, we're actually growing more and more sick and tired of it. And if it carries on too much longer, you know, we're not going to put up with it. But we don't necessarily have to have an independent country. We could say, fine, let South Africa remain as a unitary state. However, let's start to implement the types of policies which have made countries around the world which do have very different cultures combined in one state, and they do work. Examples of this is Switzerland, where, or United States, a federal type system. So we could have a South African federation in which the provinces are given much more autonomy, much more control over the policies, that they can choose their own policies, or the types of taxes they pay, how those taxes are allocated, etc. Then I think South Africa could be fine as a single country. I have no problem with that. However, I do believe that, you know, like any living entity, an organism that has a certain amount of power and access to a food source, a resource, whatever it might be, doesn't want to relinquish that. So I think it's unlikely that the ANC would want to relinquish the centralized control that they have. But it's so ironic because that type of system ends up feeding on itself, and it's going to collapse at some point. So you just look at the riots all around the country, and the unrest across all racial groups all around the country, and you can see that it cannot continue. It will not continue. And this is history too. The pendulum swings one direction and then it swings the other. And I don't believe that Cape independence is just a concept that we're putting forward that we would like people to support. I believe it's fundamental. It's in the bedrock of the earth, the very nature of the Cape and the people that inhabit it. It's just fundamental, in the same way that the people who live in Lesotho, they have an identity and a culture, and the same way with the Xhosas in the Eastern Cape and the Zulus in KwaZulu-Natal, proud people, proud nations. And so I just think it's a matter of time that things continue down this road, where you have the government signing more corrupt deals, 64 billion rand going to an arms deal. I mean, did we really need submarines and fighter jets, or did we need schools, and do we need hospitals, and do we need better infrastructure? And who's suffering? Everyone's suffering, black, white, all colors, you know. So I think we're going to see a lot more unrest, and who knows, maybe the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal will go independent before the Cape does. But it's tearing at the seams.
Sorry.
Can I pop in and just ask a question there, Jack? It's very interesting you talk about making sort of Cape independent. Now, if they did the same for perhaps the other provinces, you had KwaZulu-Natal, perhaps the old Transvaal, Mpumalanga, whatever it is, there's obviously the question raised, look, you've got a very large percentage of white people in the Cape. Now, I come from Umhlanga Rocks in Durban, where it's predominantly Zulu nation. Okay, we live in the heart of Zululand there. So, for example, KwaZulu-Natal went as an independent state. What happens to, for example, the very, the white people there who don't necessarily want to identify with the Zulu nation? What then?
Okay, it's interesting. You see this throughout history and political systems. The closer you bring the decision-making powers of whatever that political force might be to local communities, the more reasonable, rational, accountable, fair, just the system becomes. And this is why, if you look at Switzerland, it's a great example where you got French people, Italian people, German people, Romansk, survived through World War I and World War II without firing a single bullet at each other. Yet just a single meter over the border, you had Germans and French and Italians slaughtering each other at genocide, war proportions of death. And yet the people in Switzerland were living completely peacefully amongst each other. And that's because the constitution is such that when you devolve power down to local communities like that, and you don't have one king setting the policies and using it to discriminate against others, people get on. People naturally get on. And so I believe that by devolving power down to those smaller entities, we will see things get much better for everyone. And look at a place like Namibia. It's a big country, but everyone gets on fine. You don't have those political tensions. It's a great country. And South Africa's problem is it has the same political agenda as Zimbabwe did, where and again, it comes down to centralization, because you have this entity, and it could be any entity, a Zulu entity, a Boer entity, a British entity, whatever the entity, it doesn't matter. It's the system. So you have a centralized system, and this entity takes control over that system, and it has access to all these resources, and it has all this power, and it'll use that power to take as much as it can, and it doesn't care about the people, doesn't care about its own people. It's there for its own interest. And so what happened what do these policies do? They naturally destroy countries, and your economy crashes, people become impoverished, and this is what happened in Zimbabwe. Now, what does this entity do to try and ensure that it stays in power? Well, it needs to pretend to its voting base that the reason why things are so bad is not because of it, but it's because of something else. And then it has to find a scapegoat. So what Robert Mugabe does is, no, it's not that he's printing money out of thin air and he's stealing everything that's not nailed down, that Zimbabwe is such a mess. It's actually because of the evil whites and everything that they've done. And so he uses this propaganda machine to build up this boogeyman, and he just flog it and flog it and flog it. And then that's how he wins elections each time. And he does. Mugabe has a lot of support. Let's not pretend that those elections are crooked. He wins. The same is now happening here in South Africa. We're just a few years behind, where the economy is collapsing, infrastructure is collapsing, and people are hungry, and people are unemployed, and they're suffering. And so what is Jacob Zuma and the ANC doing? Well, the exact same model that any entity does that it wants to maintain power when its actions are the cause of all the destruction you're seeing around. They must divert people's attention from the real cause and say, no, it's not our actions, it's actually apartheid, and it's actually this boogeyman. And then you flog that boogeyman. And so I don't believe even here in South Africa we would have these racial tensions if it wasn't for what we read in the newspapers every day and what we hear coming out of the president's mouth or the youth league's mouth. To have a stadium filled with tens of thousands of people, and the leader of the country is saying, kill the white man, kill the Boer, kill an ethnic group. They're the cause of all your problems. That's why we have farm murders. I don't believe we would have farm murders. I think we'd all be getting along fine if it wasn't for the centralized system which creates this.
Sure. Okay. So then I would like to talk to you then about state capture and the Guptas and the exporting of the richest country that could be in the world being exported, stolen, siphoned off, so that the country itself has fallen apart. The people, black and white, are desperately poverty stricken. I mean, the unemployment amongst young blacks is over 50% in realistic numbers. It is horrifying, and it is no wonder that Mr. Malema has got such a following of these disaffected unemployed, unemployable Black people, because he gives them a hope for the future. He wears his expensive clothes. He drives his expensive German cars. He is an example for them of what you can be if you can just jump on that gravy train. And so everything he says to them is gospel truth, because schools don't teach you anymore. There's no education in South Africa. You don't have history. You don't have anything to base your thoughts on. So these people are ripe for the plucking, unfortunately. And that is not Malema's fault. He has taken advantage of that, but it's not his fault. It is the fault of those at the top, as you're saying, the centralized system, milking the country dry.
Yeah.
So what can be done about that? Because the uproar about the Guptas and the state capture and the Bell Pottinger debacle, it's huge, but nothing will come of it.
Yeah, I know. This is the game of politics, and this is what makes it so complicated. This is why, I mean, I would just as much want to be campaigning in the Eastern Cape and in KwaZulu-Natal and saying, guys, come on, wake up here. See that whites are not the enemy here. It's the system that, even within the ANC, you can see that the anger about the Gupta state capture,
Yes.
but the king decides who fills those parliamentary seats, and these guys don't want to lose their jobs, and they're getting paid handsomely, and they know if they're in the king's favor, then the king will give their uncle and cousin a tender. And so it's a tricky web. I agree with you. It's very tough. How do you explain to everyone around the country in their own way to say that again it's a force that I've recognized throughout the world, and it's not just a South African issue, it's a European Union issue also. The centralization up there is terrible. Look at the Greeks. They're suffering because they're expected to produce at the same rate as Germany, and if they don't, their debt spirals out of control, and now you've got this again a centralized parasitic system, consuming the resources of the Greek people, and it's spreading to other countries in Europe too. So wherever you look, it's centralization. That was my sort of a real lightning bolt moment for me, where you kind of see where things are going wrong and try and simplify it and get to the core of the matter. And that for me really solves it. It's centralization versus decentralization. Local communities versus autocratic governments. And the further you can move away from a centralized system towards local communities having decision-making powers, the more you solve these issues and you get positive growth instead of parasitic death.
Yeah. Okay, so can I take you up on that one? The municipalities in South Africa are stone broke. The money has been stolen, channeled elsewhere. The streets are in a mess. There's sewage flowing down the streets. They're straight into the sea. Their houses, the RDP houses are not being built, or if they're built, they fall down within a year. If you're saying that local power is better, how does one explain that? So the local power is equally corrupt.
Well, the reason the local power is equally corrupt is that just because it's local power just because it's the local arm of government doesn't mean that power is localized. It's the end of the tentacles, but they are just part of the system. So even though it's the local government that's being corrupt, they belong to the tentacle that goes all the way back to the octopus head. So I think that that decentralization is actually very popular amongst everyone. It doesn't matter what your background is. Decentralization is a very popular concept. And the fact that we've been contacted by groups in the Eastern Cape and groups in KwaZulu-Natal who have a desire for self-determination, and we see this movement throughout the world. Again, in Sudan, we had that just a few years ago, where Northern Sudan separated from Southern Sudan, because you just had fundamental differences in the way that each group, one was Muslim, the other was African animist, and people just want to live according to their own value system. And Britain wanting to separate from the European Union. It's the exact same thing. People just have this desire to say, get your hands out of my cookie jar, like this, just leave us alone. We want to run things the way we run things. And so I don't think it would be that difficult. In fact, I think quite possibly we at the Cape Party could simply sit back and watch this unfold, because I do believe that the seams are tearing. And, unfortunately, we don't want it to get to that point. We want to offer people a political and peaceful democratic solution to the mess, which is why we're putting forward our manifesto, which is based upon the principles of direct democracy in Switzerland and the economic freedoms of Singapore. And we're saying, hey, we can have this, and we can have it pretty soon too. All we need is people to wake up and support it. And I think that we don't even need to do anything. It's just naturally happening. Centralization is like cutting off the natural water flow to a pond. It just begins to stagnate, and the algae begins to grow, and all of these things begin to appear. And so these problems are being felt by everyone in the country. And the Abatembu were pushing hard a few years ago, and that hasn't died. That sentiment will be stronger this year than it was last year. Next year it'll be stronger than it was this year. And the same applies to the people in the other parts of South Africa that will be feeling this and going, what is going on? You promised us sugar plums and rivers of milk, and here we are, poorer than we've ever been, lower education than we've ever had. And these things are not going away. Economically and politically, it's a fact. It's a political and scientific fact that from here on forward, it's only going to be less education, more crumbling infrastructure, rand crumbling even more, cost of living going up, cost of electricity, cost of water, food prices, etc. All these things, it's inevitable. That's where we're heading. So what happens when these things become so bad and the government has promised so much? There can only be unrest. And because we do have a strong tribal system in South Africa, the tribal kings, chiefs have got great power. King Zwelithini, I think he's one of the best paid unofficial parliamentarians. I don't know, what you quite call it, but tribal leader. And so the kings, the chiefs get paid, a stipend from the government. And so these systems are already in place. They're there. They just need to come into the fore. So I just think it's a matter of time.
Can I jump in here with a comment about Europe, having lived in a couple of different places here? What's interesting to notice is that the infrastructure here is crumbling because of the same thing, because of the centralization of power. We're noticing it particularly, for example, here in Portugal, local farmers not farming anymore because of how the European Union has come and muscled in, and it really has destroyed local communities. And there is very much, as you say, a call for local governments, local decision making, so that it's all based on what's good for the local people, not what's good for someone at the top of a political agenda. But just another comment as well, you do bring up Switzerland, and I would just like to put this into a little bit of context. I lived in Switzerland for a while. I worked out there and got to understand the way the sort of infrastructure fits together. I was like, yeah, man, this is a great place to live. average wage there is like 6,500 francs a month, and that's even a receptionist job. There's virtually no unemployment, and you kind of wonder, how do they do this? But what you also have to remember, what someone pointed out to me, was that it's actually, it's not a case of Switzerland being very well managed or the way they do things. It's actually a deliberate setup to protect the Bank of International Settlements. They keep Switzerland famously neutral and out of wars. You talked about how everyone else was having wars with each other. They keep Switzerland neutral so that no one can go after their assets. You see, if one country's at war with another, the losing country has their assets usurped by the winner, as what happened with Nazi Germany. They went in and took, looted Greece and took all of those beautiful statues back to the Berlin Museum, which I've seen for myself, all those beautiful artifacts. And they did that in many different parts of the world. But the way to protect the Roman Empire's money is to keep it in a place where no one's going to invade because they're not at war. That's why Switzerland stays the way it does. It's not impoverished by war. They don't have to worry about things like military spending or anything. And yet, for a country who has supposedly no real enemies, they are the only country in the world that has deep underground bases to facilitate their entire population in the event of a nuclear war. And you have to wonder why that is, if they are supposedly not being threatened or anything. Again, that, I believe, is just a propaganda ploy to keep the money of the Roman Empire safe, because Switzerland is the Vatican's bank. Bank of International Settlements is what keeps the rest of the world in debt, including South Africa. Feel free to jump in.
I mean, I can't speak on that matter. So what I can identify from a political point of view is that the system certainly works, and as you point out, there might be reasons for that stability, but it's not the only country that works. Singapore is another country that works. Hong Kong's another country that works. They're varying degrees. Look at Mauritius. How it, in the last 20 years, it went from a fairly poor country to doing pretty damn well. Why? Well, they actually copied a few Singapore policies. So I think if we use the world as a laboratory, for whatever reasons those countries are the way they are, we adopt those systems, they're proven to work. It's basic economics, basic politics. That's that type of system does result in stability, and if we compound that with the economic freedoms of Singapore and Hong Kong, then we believe the Cape Republic could be a fantastic place. And but so moving it back now, I've spoken quite broadly. I want to move it back to the Cape and why the Cape Party exists and why we're here. I hope people from KwaZulu-Natal, Zulus, Xhosas, Vendors, any tribe in South Africa, whoever's listening to this, can actually maybe take a page out of what we're promoting at the Cape Party, and push for similar things in their areas, because really that's the cause of the problem. And if you want to live better lives, we need to break the centralized system that's creating this debt. So back to the Cape, our problem is we need to convince our people here that the only solution moving forward is to devolve power, bring it back to the Western Cape. And if the ANC will not negotiate with us, then we need to grow a backbone, and we need to vote in a referendum. And if we get 51%, we need to declare the Western Cape an independent country. So wake up, people, and let's start doing this, because unless we start taking action now, it's going to get bad. It's going to really get bad. And we'd much rather have Cape independence calmly, peacefully, through a democratic election. And so let's start moving on this. And the biggest stumbling block towards people waking up to this is really the belief that the Democratic Alliance, the DA, is a real opposition to the ANC. And they're not. Their policies are virtually identical to the ANC. I mean, you got, I actually supported the DA many years ago under Tony Leon. Back then, their policies were quite a bit better than what they are now. But they support black economic empowerment. They support affirmative action. They support land seizures, land reform. You know, however they want to frame it, they support this. That is fun. Those are fundamental policies. The ANC stands for that, the EFF stands for that, and the DA stands for that. These are your three primary mainstream parties, all supporting BEE, affirmative action, and land reform. Now, why would anyone vote for the DA if you're living in the Western Cape and you're discriminated against on your skin color? 70% of the population belongs to an ethnic group that is discriminated against by a black economic empowerment. 70%. So we've got the vast majority here that are being politically persecuted by these policies. Why would you vote for a political party like the DA, which supports these policies, promotes these policies? That's those. Any one of those three. There's a fourth one. Yes.
Can we go through those things, because our audience is international? So we're to any of us, BEE and land restoration or whatever. It's a daily thing for us. But other people don't understand that. And I think it is very important that the world understands the root problems that are attacking all South Africans, so that they can get a better picture of why we resent it so much.
Okay, so black economic empowerment, as the name implies, although it's just a euphemism, it's not really about empowerment. It's about, again, the cancerous central entity taking whatever it can. Black economic empowerment is it's a political tool in order to take control of as many aspects of the economy as they possibly can, and to put them into black hands, but more likely ANC connected hands. That's what black economic empowerment is, to put it quite simply. So for example, we've got South African Airways, which is a parastatal and run like, I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. If it was in the free market, it would have been dead long ago. An absolute mess. So what happens? Well, the government just keeps on bailing it out and bailing it out and bailing it out. And the same applies to Eskom, our monopoly, the company which has a monopoly on providing energy to our country. What happens? Well, they forgot to fill the reserves, and they haven't thought ahead. The water supply as well, they haven't foreseen droughts, so nothing has gone into desalination plants or building more dams, etc. And so these organizations, these parastatals, are given money by the government, and the people who run them are connected to the government under this black economic empowerment political system. You have people that have very little experience, if not no experience, in some of the fields. And so you have these people that don't know how to run a nuclear plant or ensure that water cleaning stations, whatever, are efficiently run, etc., things like that. And so they begin to crumble and fall apart. So that's black economic empowerment, and it's also, that's one aspect of black economic empowerment. Then it's also your small businesses. I mean, my mother, for example, she's got a little home business where she makes fynbos oils, products for pets and things like that. And the amount of forms that she has to fill out each year, just as a single person, running a small household business, it affects everyone. And so that's what BEE is. It affects you from the smallest to the biggest, your energy supplies, your water supplies, and it's got us in the mess we're in here today. Then you have the Employment Equity Act, which what that says is that compounded on BEE is that companies and organizations need to reflect the demography of the entire country. So the entire country's demographics is 80% black, and and then it's about, I think, 9% white, 9% colored, and then 2% Indian and Asian, and approximately. So this is the demographics of the whole of South Africa. However, here in the Western Cape, our population is 50% colored, approximately 20% white, and about 30% black. So the Employment Equity Act says, no, sorry, here in the Cape, you will have a company that, let's say, reflects this demographic perfectly. Maybe 50% of your workers are colored, 20% are white, 30% are black, and they'll say, no, you need to fire, you know, 80% of your colored staff and 90% of your white staff, and you need to employ 3 times, threefold of your black staff in order to meet the Employment Equity Act, which is just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Employment Equity Act, I think someone did the numbers where it would drive approximately 1 million citizens in the Cape into unemployment and poverty. So that's the Employment Equity Act. So we've done BEE, Employment Equity Act, and like quota systems, so affirmative action. It's not just businesses and energy and water, stuff like that. It's everything. It's your newspapers. It's your sports teams. So we have sports teams which the coaches have got an unbelievably difficult time just choosing the right sports team, the players for their sports team, because they've got to have the right amount of this color and that color. And it's like, it just becomes ridiculous. And it also gets one so asphyxiated on the concept of race. It's just all about race. And it's terrible for anyone, because you've then got to ask yourself, if you're a black person in a business or in a rugby team or whatever sports team or something, and you're damn good and you work bloody hard to get there and you studied hard, etc., and it undermines the quality of that person, where it's like, oh, well, are you there because you deserve to be there, or because there's a political system that puts you there? So it's really unhealthy across the board. So that's those are the three the 3 elements.
I do have a question about, if you make the Cape an independent state, okay, so it's going to be like a country, would you then, if you live in Johannesburg, have to apply for immigration if you wanted to go live in Cape Town? How would you go about implementing that? Are the borders shut?
Oh, look, we would have the same borders as any other country around the world. So I mean, I think Australia's got a pretty good immigration system, and basically how it would work. Look, certainly the other thing is, we're not. The regions that border us currently are always going to border us. We're always going to be neighbors. And you know what? We don't want to have fights with anyone. We want to have good relationships with anyone. So we want to be like neighborly friends. And obviously we have a historical relationship with the rest of this territory. And so I think we would be much more lenient on people in other parts of South Africa that would want to come and live in the Cape Republic. And feel that we might do a better job, under a Cape Party government than under the ANC government, in Independent Cape. So we would certainly be much more lax on people living in South Africa. With regards to the rest of the world, we would have the same types of immigration policies as Australia. It would be immigration by invitation. You'd have to have skills that we needed. And then you would apply for permanent residence, or rather apply for a work permit. And if you didn't commit any crimes and showed yourself to be a good citizen and supported the Cape way of life, then in time you become a citizen.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask you is that you say it's enshrined in our constitution that we should be able to do that. The Cape is an independent. Why then will the ANC not come to the table and even discuss it?
The ANC is a centralized party. Their ideals are very centrist. but like any political entity, they listen to they listen to pressure. And so it's not for the ANC to come to the table and say, oh, we hear you guys want to talk about Section 235 and be independent. We can't expect them to do that. Of course they wouldn't, It's up to the people of the Cape to get off their couches, get off their chairs, and start doing something. I love this quote from Albert Einstein, where he says that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And the amount of conversations I have with friends and just people in the street and in general, you just walk past a restaurant table or you're out in the pub and you hear people talking, complaining, oh, the country's this, the country's that, and it's an absolute mess. And well, okay, yes, we get that. So do something about it. If, we voted here in the Cape, at least. The DA has been in power now, the last 23 years. The DA, first of all, in 1994, they were the DP, was the NP in power. Then the NP, Martinez van Schalkwyk, completely jumped ship, went into the ANC, sunk the Nats, and then from then on, it's been the DA, in power the whole time. So between the Nats and between the DA, we've had two political entities since 1994 that have done nothing for the interest of the people of the Cape. So the NP didn't do it after 94. The DA hasn't done it. In fact, we now have I mentioned 3 points earlier. There was a fourth I wanted to bring up, and it's actually the most important one. And it's called the Division of Revenue Act. The Division of Revenue Act is how much revenue is collected in taxes throughout the country from each province, and then how it's distributed around the country. The Western Cape pays 185 billion rand in taxes. The national government, the national treasury allocates us back in our local government and provincial government allocation a mere 45 billion. 185 goes in, we get back 45 billion. This is daylight robbery. If we were independent, we could cut taxes in half and still double services for our people. So I've got friends in the DA, and I've said, what's wrong with you people? Come on, like how can you support this? And they're some of them are arrogant, and some of them are just naive, and they say no, we're a national party, we have national ambitions, and we're going to take over the national government, and then we're going to control all the taxes ourselves, so it doesn't matter. And I don't. First of all, that's a terrible attitude to have, because you're kicking your voter base in the teeth. You're basically saying to all the people in the Cape who are paying these taxes, getting a quarter back for us to allocate, and you're basically saying, well, to hell with you. It's you're being economically robbed dry, but we've got long-term plans here, so just get with the party and support us. And so this is where people need to realize what's happening, and we want to hold the DA accountable. We want to say, no, I'm sorry. You're not going to get the vote from the people of the Cape if you're going to support political policies which discriminate against 70% of our ethnic group, that robs us economically, and you support ANC and EFF policies like land reform and BE and affirmative action, etc. So the DA has really betrayed the people of the Cape, and I think it's time that they woke up. And so this is my call to the people of the Cape. So people in the Eastern Cape, you guys need to get together. You need to band strong. People in KwaZulu-Natal need to band strong and say you're sick and tired of this, and push for your independence and take control of your communities. And my message to the people here in the Cape is, come on, we've got to pull our act together. And the DA is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they're taking us down this road, and their policies are no different from the ANC. So if you want change, listen to Albert Einstein and choose it.
Sure, that was impassioned. That was really impassioned. But Jack, for me, you talk about the billions, 140 something billion that the Cape pays in taxes. So how is it even possible that anybody is going to let that tax base go? I know you're saying decentralize, but if the Cape decides to decentralize and the other provinces don't, you are going to have incredible opposition against losing that money.
No, it's, Gauteng and the Western Cape are the two primary tax producers, or rather, we lose much more than we put in. But it's not as if the other provinces don't have tremendous resources and are fantastic tax base themselves. KwaZulu-Natal is a huge tax base. Gauteng is the biggest in the country. And you've got extremely productive farmlands in the Eastern Cape and natural resources all around the country. And the problem is the current political system is it's creating urbanization towards the sort of the three primary centers: Durban, Johannesburg, Pretoria, and then obviously Cape Town. And so, as a result of that, it's not as if those tax bases wouldn't become, or the economies rather, of those places wouldn't become far more productive if once again we got rid of the centralized octopus tentacles that remove value and refocus value in areas in which it's easiest for them to steal it. And so the first thing is that devolution of power benefits everyone. So regardless of where you are in South Africa, you're going to benefit from a more federal system, and even more so from outright independence if your region chooses that. The second thing is that it's not for the rest of the country to decide either. That's quite simply, it's not their decision to go, well, we're not going to let you go. That's not a democracy. That's a criminal hostage scenario, and that's what we need to get people to wake up and see. Britain didn't want to be held criminally hostage by the European Union, and the British people said, no, thank you. We don't like the way this is going, and we want to return to controlling our own affairs ourselves. So with regards to taxes, as a secondary answer to what I said, everyone in the rest of the country would benefit. Devolution just works better. But the bottom line is that, you know what, I'm sorry. This is the Cape. This is our home. These are our people working hard. It's their resources. Charity starts at home. I'm sorry, we've spoken to many colored families in Mitchell's Plain, been on the housing list for up to 40 years that don't have houses. Whereas we've got the DA and the ANC proposing these, again, so there's another point on BEE, rather, Employment Equity Act, where houses are allocated on a racial basis. And so you've got people coming in from other parts of South Africa simply because of their skin color, other parts of Africa even. We know that in one of the housing blocks, which is now called Blikkiesdorp, one of the first housing blocks there, we were talking to the local colored communities, and they were saying just across the road where houses were being built, they saw black people who were Nigerians who were getting houses simply because of their skin color. And so it's just not fair. It's just not right. It's racism, and we need to put an end to it. And we need to use our taxes to look after our people. We've got huge rates of TB, huge rates of AIDS, huge unemployment, housing issues, and we need to look after our people first.
Okay, so then, how does this differ from the NKP, for instance, who wants self-determination, or Front National? What is the difference? But I take it that you're not going to trace the coloureds out. They live there. That's their country. They're going to stay in the Cape with you. So yes, I understand where it won't be just like an Irania with only white people. I do understand that. But how does it differ? Because if, from my point of view, if you and Front National and Vryheidsfront and NKP and all the rest of them held hands on this issue and went across the country and said, look, This is what we all agree on. Vote one way instead of having all these little splinter groups calling for donations and votes and whatever and never having one voice. Does it not make more sense for all of you to just say, okay, this is what we have decided on fully. Let's do it. And where the differences are, we'll iron out afterwards.
Sure. Look, I mean, like I said, as we support the Abu Tembu independence and KwaZulu-Natal independence, I've spoken to members of those organizations that you mentioned, and we certainly support devolution of power in any shape that it takes. However, I think where the Cape Party is different is our home happens to be one of the most cosmopolitan places, not just in South Africa, but in Africa and the world. I mean, let's think about how Cape Town was formed. And this will be interesting for your American listeners. Cape Town and New York are contemporary cities. The Dutch East India Company, Jan van Riebeeck and Peter Stuyvesant were contemporaries in the Dutch East India Company. And Peter Stuyvesant was fundamental in the formation, the early stages, the early years of New York City being founded. And Jan van Riebeeck obviously, established the Dutch East India Company, the refreshment station in Cape Town. And so this is why we have such a diverse population and frankly, quite a cosmopolitan, outlook on things. For hundreds of years now, the Cape Town has been the umbilical cords to the west and to the east. We've got huge Eastern influence, Malaysian, Indonesian, Madagascan, obviously European. And so all of these different cultures make up what the Cape is today. And the majority population being colored. Again, there's different colored groups. You've got Muslim colors, Christian colors, Khoisan colors. And each one has a voice in the Cape. So because of that, our goal is different to Front National, to the Freedom Front, to those groups. And again, I support any group that is pushing for self-determination, because I just think that force is a positive force. But here in the Cape, our vision is quite different to theirs. But yeah, it doesn't mean that there isn't common ground. But their interests are also in different parts of the country. Here in the Cape, this is our primary focus, and that's what I think we need to keep our attention on.
Okay, so for me, the difficulty is, yes, I agree with most of what you said, but you don't need to ask permission to have this happen. You need to have a vote. But that's not going to work in South Africa. If you vote in the Cape that you want to secede, it's not going to be as simple as that, Jack. The country, it's just not going to be that easy. We've tried it here in Texas, and California is trying it at the moment as well. Half of California wants to secede. There are a million reasons why it shouldn't happen, and I do not believe that the centralized power, which is in power right now, is either going to let go of that power. Look at Mugabe. Look at a lot of the dictators in Africa. They are not going to let go of power easily, and they're not going to let go of any little area of their power easily. So even if you had the votes for it, they would say, okay, you can have a voice in Parliament, and you would have seats in Parliament. They're not going to let go of the Cape, surely.
Okay. No, I hear you. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And let me first of all say that we're in the realm of speculation right now. We don't know how the future is going to unfold. So what you are proposing is very possible, and I don't disagree with it at all. But we're speculating. It's quite possible that things could be different. And then I also want to state that Cape independence is not necessarily, the outcome that we have to have. It's not as if we put all our chips in one basket and we're like, Cape independence or nothing. We're saying, we'll sit down with the ANC. We'll say, listen, the DA's been an easy ride for you guys. They support most of your policies, but the Cape Party, we've got people that are now sick and tired of what's been happening for too long, and we want a better deal. Instead of getting 45 billion rand back out of the 185 billion that we put back, give us more. Instead of having an Employment Equity Act that tells us that 80% of our employment force needs to be black and only 10% can be white and 10% colored. I'm sorry, that's not fair. That just it's ridiculous. It cannot work in the Cape. So give us a better deal. So I agree, but let's first get that bargaining chip. Let's get the people to say, you know what, we're sick and tired, and if you don't start listening to us, then we will consider making the Cape an independent country. But let's get to that point first. Just like in Catalonia, in Spain, where they have, that is a very strong independence movement. And they haven't, again, the Spanish government has been very slow to respond and to listen to the Catalan independence movement, but that hasn't stopped them from pushing, just drip, 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 saying, listen, we want a better deal. Barcelona's, we're not getting enough taxes back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not saying that we're going to solve this overnight, and as soon as we get the majority, the Cape's going to be an independent country. But this is the only answer. And we need to start right now pushing in that direction so that 5-10 years from now, we can sit down at the negotiation table and say to the ANC, listen, if you don't give us a better deal, then we're really going to make life, we're going to go. We're going to cut the cords.
What I like the most about this, Jack, is your total optimism that in 5-10 years from now, there will still be a table to sit at to negotiate with the ANC, because it doesn't look like it. It really doesn't look like there's going to be any tables anywhere to sit at. It's going to be total collapse, because you talk about infrastructure, you talk about the ESCOM, you talk about SAA, you talk about everything is such a damn mess that putting any of it right is going to take longer than it took to put it wrong. The infrastructure and the things built up over the previous 100 years have taken 23 years to start falling apart. But now they're really falling apart with a vengeance. And so I don't know. I don't know what to say to you, because now the story is they're going to make fewer provinces. So do you think that is a springboard for you to say, okay, you reduce the number of provinces, we'll be our own? Is it a springboard? Is it a possibility to use that to your own advantage?
Yeah. It's we've got to do whatever we can, and there's no one doing it. The DA is not doing it. The DA is part of the problem. So we're just, and to the points that you raised earlier, those are points that are outside of political and democratic issues. The Cape Party is a political vehicle, and we want to use democratic means to achieve our goals. You're right. If there is no table to sit at, then the situation will have gone so far that there'll be rioting in KwaZulu-Natal, rioting in the Eastern Cape, rioting throughout the whole country, and then it's not a matter for us to be discussing anything. It's not a political matter. It becomes a civil unrest matter. The Cape Party is a peaceful political vehicle, and that's the road that we're going to be pushing on. So reducing the provinces, well, I depending on what that actually looks like, I don't like the sound of it. I think it could be a political tactic to impose further pressure on the Cape and our people. If it is that, then I think we could see a lot of angry people here in the Cape who are not going to accept that type of political imposition. And who knows? We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there.
May I pop in here quickly? Sorry, Karin, if I might. I'm quite interested, Jack, on your opinion. If I was to say to you that the majority of the control of South Africa, it doesn't matter which political party, is largely coming from outside the borders. In other words, the centralized control is not just in South Africa. Centralized control is global, and it's within a very small group of hands of psychopathic ruling elites, most of whom don't really give a damn about Africa at all. How would you as a political party tackle the control of South Africa from outside forces?
There are so many forces out there in the world that and there are counterweights too. I mean, let's look at powerful countries like America, like Russia, like China, like the European Union as a bloc. There are times when these massive power forces, they reach certain forks in the road or disagreement points where just logic has to prevail. And, there are disagreements between Russia and America, and China's obviously on Russia's side there. And there are big, powerful forces, pulling on areas in which they have a conflict of opinion. And so it doesn't always go according to one power structure's way or the other. And I think South Africa, the fortunate thing about us is we're kind of the guys down here at the bottom where it's like, don't mind us, we don't want to cause any trouble. We're not such a big gemstone, I think, in the political strategy of those international forces. And so yeah, at the end of the day, politics is politics, and you've got to cross those bridges when you get there. One of the pathways towards independence is being recognized by a foreign power. Obviously, the more powerful that foreign power is, who you get recognized by, the quicker you gain your independence, etc. So yeah, I'm certainly not unaware of those influences that you speak about. But like anything, yeah, you're dealing with people with interests, and yeah, you've got to try and communicate your case and get the best possible outcome. But on the short term, I think to involve oneself too much in those forces which really we don't have much control over, the main target would be getting people to just wake up on a grassroots level and show them an alternative, show them a solution. And I think once we start with that, it's the first step in the right direction.
Jack, I worry that there are so many unemployed, desperate people in South Africa that trying to bring them together on any level is almost impossible, because they are helpless and hopeless. And I understand that you are holding out hope to them, but it's kind of a long-term hope. It's not the immediate a roof over my head tonight and a meal to eat. How does one get your high ideals across to people who are subsistence level, who are worried about what they're going to eat tonight and where they're going to sleep? How do you make them interested enough to go to the ballot box and put a vote? How do they even register to go to the ballot box when they don't have an address? Those are the immediate situation in South Africa that concerns me greatly, that these people are so outside of society. there is no way of giving them a hope or reaching them or allowing them to vote even.
Yeah, well, fortunately, our message, even though one can certainly go as high as you want with it. One can go into great detail, and I certainly enjoy discussing politics and economics and all the fascinating details of it. But it's actually quite simple. And I sort of mentioned it earlier, and it's sort of, especially the colored community that's suffering the worst in the Cape. Charity starts at home. Everyone understands that. Charity starts at home. The other thing is, well, we're putting 4 Rand in, we're getting 1 Rand back. It's we don't need to talk about the Division of Revenue Act or this or that, but the Cape is paying 4 Rand and we're getting 1 Rand back. If we were independent, we'd have 4 Rand back. So these houses that are going to people from other parts of Africa. Well, that house is, you were born here, your ancestors have lived here for centuries. That house should be yours. You were born here, your ancestors have lived here for centuries. You shouldn't lose your job because you're the wrong skin color. So, these are bread and butter issues that no matter what angle you want to take it from a simple angle, from a complex angle, it makes sense to anyone.
It does, Jack, but it feels to me more idealistic than realistic. I don't see how you get to these people who don't have a radio, who don't have a TV, who don't have a place to live. And they are the majority, are they not? They are the impoverished, poor, unemployed.
No, I mean, it's quite remarkable, especially the youngsters these days. Everyone's got a cell phone, and you can download apps on it, or there's something called Mixit that's very popular, and so you can reach people in ways that you couldn't in the past. So the internet really is a powerful, powerful tool. There's not many places on the planet that the internet hasn't reached. And so I think that there are ways of getting one's message out there today that one couldn't do 20 years ago.
I do.
And even just and going face to face.
Saying, but I kind of think that my concern in the last 5-6 years has been the unemployed, dispossessed white people because of BEE, etc., etc. And I've raised an awful lot of money to house, feed, clothe, re-educate them. Now, those are the people that I kind of think, what are you going to do with them? Because they don't have cell phones. They don't have the internet. They don't even have toilets or running water. And I'm not talking just about white people here. You have an enormous colored population in the same situation, and huge black squatter camps in the Cape as well. So those are the people that you need to reach to get to vote, to get them to go to the voting, to buy into what you're saying. But if I'm not arguing in any way with you, I'm just trying to say, how does somebody who has got a rumbling belly, no roof over their head, is freezing in the Cape snow, how do you interest them in the politics and the future view of this thing without saying to them, look, this is how we can help you now?
Okay.
I worry.
Yeah, no, I get your question and concern, and yes, this is, I guess, getting down to the nuts and bolts of politics. And the truth is that money is the mother's milk of politics. So anyone listening to this who supports the idea of an independent Cape, based on the direct democracy of Switzerland and the economic freedoms of Singapore. Anyone who would like a place in the world in which we truly can be free regardless of your race, it's going to be an amazing country. For international viewers, listeners, if you've ever been to Cape Town, it's beautiful. If you want a Singapore of Africa, a Switzerland of Africa, we need support. We need to do what the DA has done. The Democratic Alliance had 2% of the votes in 94, and now they are the huge majority here in the Western Cape. If we had what the DA has right now, we could declare the Western Cape an independent country. It's within the DA's grasp. It's in their hands. They could do it if they wanted to. They could hold a referendum. The Premier of the Western Cape has the powers to call a referendum, and if we got a majority, that would be our mandate from the people. And with that mandate, we could go to the South African government, we could go to the United Nations, we could say, listen, we have a majority here in a territory that wants to pursue self-determination. So how do we do that? Well, we need a budget. We need to reach the people. Like you say, we need to do what the DA has done for the last 2 decades. And to do that, we need flyers, we need posters, we need Facebook ads, we need radio ads, we need TV ads, we need T-shirts, we need caps, we need support. And so anyone who agrees with our vision, we would urge them to go to our website, go to our donate page, and help us make this vision a reality.
I am in agreement. And I am fully behind you, Jack. Otherwise, I would not be doing this at all. So I am fully behind what you want to do, because I believe that we need, for not just South Africa's sake. South Africa has been a microcosm of what has happened then in the rest of the world. It's been a blueprint for, we'll try it out in South Africa and then spread it to elsewhere. The gazillions of people flowing over your borders, the number of illegals, the xenophobic attacks, etc. They were allowed in South Africa, and now look at the rest of the world. I mean, Europe is inundated with these people because nobody looks at South Africa. Nobody saw what was happening. Nobody was interested, and it rolled out elsewhere. So if we could get this right in the Cape, it would be such an achievement and such a victory for people around the world who want to do the same thing. As I've just mentioned, Texas, parts of California, they want their own piece, not even necessarily a piece of the pie. They just want to live in peace. Thank you. I want my own religion, my own piece of land, and take the regulations away and let me live. That's really what, from everybody that I've spoken to, what people want.
Yeah.
Get your fingers out of my life and let me live it. We all know there have to be laws. We all know that we have to abide by certain norms and decencies. But we don't have to have our garden water regulated to the extent that if you collect rainwater, you're going to go to jail, which is happening here in the United States. So yes, I'm fully behind what you want to do, because it would be an enormous victory for people around the world. But I'm a little perturbed that it's only your area of the Cape that's involved in this. I worry desperately about the anti-white sentiment in South Africa, the farm murders, the white squatter camps. I have sleepless nights about it, Jack. I can't. I worry myself to death. I feel that for a disabled, grey-haired old granny, I'm still not doing enough. I'm not doing enough to help the people in South Africa. And I worry that you're excluding those people. And they are the people who need help the most. They don't have jobs. They don't have a place to stay. They don't have food. They don't have clothes. They are discriminated against by everybody. The one camp in Gauteng, if a charity takes a bucky load of donations to them, they're attacked by the black squatter camp, who then take the donations and threaten to burn the white camp down if they don't get their share. Those are the people that are wringing my heart out. And I don't see a place for them in your vision.
No, you're entirely wrong there. And again, this is politics, and this is the facts on the ground. And you know, just as Mel was talking about, you know, international pressures, you know, we need to focus on moving the first pebble. And that starts right here in my hometown, in Cape Town, in the Cape. And I assure you that there would be a ripple effect, because like I mentioned earlier, that the forces that drove Robert Mugabe to do the terrible things that he did are the same forces that are driving the ANC government to do what they're doing. And everyone loses. Everyone in South Africa is losing as a result of that. So we've got a fairly large task ahead of us, but it's of all the tasks out there, I see a very clear path towards achieving this. There's a very clear path. We just need to have the support that the DA has right now. And if you look at how the DA got into power, they got into power when the NP, which had the majority in the Western Cape, sold that party down the river and colluded with the ANC, self-imploded, and the natural opening was for the DA. And the DA has shown themselves to be entirely focused on taking the same electorate that the ANC has, and in order to do that, they need to wear the same identity that the ANC has. So they've adopted all of their policies. And so one of two things, you know, could happen here. We could have a conversation with the DA, and they could take a step back from the cliff and say, wake up, you're crazy, and you need to start looking after the people that have put you into power, get the Cape independent, and that'll be a seismic shift. Let me assure you, we've got to take our minds to that place. It's not separate. It all happens at the same time. It's all interconnected. So the Cape becomes independent. Now there's a big question. What are you going to call the rest of South Africa? Is that also going to be called South Africa? Or is it going to be called Azania? And what about the other parts? Well, wait, hey, the guys in the Cape have gone independent. Us Abatembus in the Eastern Cape have been pushing for this for how many generations? We want independence too. Then you have KwaZulu-Natal. So I can't predict the future, but I can tell you what our pathway is. And I can tell you how we're going to achieve it, or parts of it, or at least push pressure in the right direction. And all the concerns that you're speaking about will indirectly be affected positively and hopefully completely solved by the direction that we're pushing. We don't necessarily need to go particularly to that source to try and solve that problem. And there are good groups, fantastic groups out there that are fighting that. And I agree with you, and I support that 100%. But our battle is right here, and we need to do this, and everyone will win if we take positive steps forward.
Jack, I really admire you because you're doing something. And as you yourself said, you walk past people in the cafe or in the road or wherever, and they're all bitching and griping and moaning. You at least are standing up and doing something towards a positive future. So I absolutely have to tip my hat to you. But you're looking at your hometown and your home province, and I understand that, because here in America, my husband's involved in these things, and we always say it begins at home. It begins in your own backyard, and you have to start changing things in your own backyard. And I do agree that we have to shift one boulder at a time. And if you could do this one, and if somebody else could get self-determination somewhere else at the same time, jointly. But are there enough concerned, involved, willing people? Or are South Africans as a whole so beaten down that they're not prepared to take a chance, a step, whatever? You are. But are there enough? As you said, you could sit down with Maimane, but I don't think that's going to help. He's not going to give up his little slice of power, is he?
Probably not.
The DA, once you have power, you're not going to give it up willingly. So sitting down with them doesn't seem to me, it may work. You never know. Nobody's tried it. So if you don't try it, you'll never know. But it scares me that as I said earlier, people are so immune to the violence in South Africa now. It's just part of every day. They're immune to the barring themselves, making themselves prisoners inside their own homes. It happened slowly. It was a drip, drip, drip effect. And now, well, it's just a normal life to them. So I worry as I read the posts on Facebook, as I see what your party is doing, I worry that people are so beaten down by the last 23 years of stealing from them, killing them, murdering them, reducing them to nothing, that they're not willing to stand up and do anything anymore. Do you have that concern, or do you have the belief that people just need to be given an alternative and they will stand up and yell for it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll answer that question in a personal way. I've been politically, active most of my life, or interested most of my life. But I've been very much active over the last 10 years. Can't believe it how the years are wearing on. I'm 10 years in this game. I'm ready to retire. So I'll say that when I first started, I was very emotionally invested to the point where it wasn't healthy for me. And I think I grew quite disillusioned. But now I sort of I can't change. I can't do more than what I'm doing. People either hear me or they don't. It either makes sense to them or it doesn't, and if people are going to, like Einstein says, continue to make the same decisions over and over again, well, you know what? I can't shed a tear any more than I have in the past. We've got a vision. It's exciting. It's positive. It's a win-win situation, and we're very excited to share that with people. And if they connect with it and they get on board, then we can make it happen. But if, like you say, people are so beaten down and downtrodden that they have no self-will, there's no self-belief, then, well, I guess they say you get the government you deserve. And then I've devoted so much of my life already to this. It's and I'm the one there talking about it on the front lines, and so if people still they can't bother to go to an election booth and put an X on a piece of paper, yet they're willing to sell their homes and they close their businesses and leave their jobs to emigrate to another country. They can't put an X on a piece of paper in a ballot box. Well, then I live in a crazy world, and that's, I've got to accept it. That's the world I live in. But I can't do more than I'm doing, and that helps me sleep at night fine.
No, I agree with you. Jack, because you're one of the very few that is actually standing up and doing something. And I have to admire that, because everybody's a keyboard cowboy. Everybody can bitch and fight and carry on social media. But ask them to get up off their backside and go and do something. And the answer is, sorry, oh no, couldn't possibly. I know this. And I understand that. And that is why I admire and get behind anybody in South Africa who is willing to take a stand and try and do something. I'm not in the business of arguing with you or trying to beat you down. And I'm just trying to express my personal worries that South Africa has become such a mess that it is going to take literally a miracle to rescue it. And those same keyboard cowboys are the same ones who aren't going to listen, the same tape that we're making now, the comments on it are going to be negative to the nth degree because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. And so you're English, you're not a Boer, and you're not from the Transvaal, and you're not an Afrikaner. So what the hell do you think you're doing? Those are the kind of comments we get. I've had them endlessly in the last 10 years, endlessly. You have no idea. Who do I think I am addressing an Afrikaans Boer problem when I'm a Donner's Engelsman? So you're going to get that same thing coming at you. And those are the things that bother me. Because if you could do this, I would be the first one to stand on the rooftops and scream, Jack did it, yay. But the whole culture of South Africa just seems to me to make it impossible for this to happen. And it breaks my heart. Because if we could just all of us get together behind one movement, it wouldn't solve every problem. But we could deal with the other problems later. Instead of being an Engelsman, an Afrikaner, or a Boer, we could just be one people with one problem, and we'll take this solution. I don't like everything you have to say, or everything the DA has to say, or everything the NKP has to say, but we'll sort that out later. Let's find a joint solution. And that's where I'm coming from. I will back you to the last breath in my body to try and get this done, because it is a solution to the damn South African problem that is endless and is breaking people. So I'm not here arguing with you. I'm just desperately trying to find a way to make people stand together and stand for one damn thing, because they won't.
Yeah. Well, may Jack and Karin, please. I just want to say, Jack, I really admire what you're doing, especially being so young and doing it. One of the things that really frustrates me endlessly is this wall of ignorance and apathy, particularly amongst the younger generation. The fact that you have been doing this already for since you're 23, you've been doing it for 10 years. It's very inspiring. We need more youngsters getting up, standing up, going for the gusto, trying to make a difference on whatever level that is. And like Karin said, I don't necessarily agree with everything you said, simply because I've got a very different perspective to this whole thing living outside South Africa. But what I do see is a lot of enthusiasm and passion and intelligence with the way that you have approached this. And definitely, if we are going to have a case of making a part or getting some kind of regional or local control, the Cape would be the best place to start, because it is such a powerhouse. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I mean, if you look at these documentary programs on the top 5 holiday destinations in the world, Cape Town's always in the top 5. It is such an important part of the sort of greater South Africa picture, that if you could get Cape Town into a situation where perhaps you were producing your own currency, which is a good way to start being independent, have the Cape Tonian Rand or whatever. You look at parts of London where, like, Brixton's got the Brixton pound, and it's thriving right now. Getting that going within your local community is an initiative that I can only applaud. And my goodness, we would back and support and give you as much time and airtime and advertising as we could if you could get that sort of thing absolutely going. Again, my concern is that there does need to be some consideration from the point of view of anybody engaging in politics as to the realistic potential of what is achievable and what is not. And you're never going to be able to achieve your ideals unless you properly, and I do mean this, comprehend the bigger picture, and that means understanding how everything plays in. Nothing is separate. Now, you made the comment earlier, oh, we're South Africa down at the bottom of the world, and that is the biggest mistake you could ever make. Understand South Africa is central to what's going on the planet because of the resources. And it's the reason, it's probably the country that suffers the hardest, but everybody else is following suit. South Africa's been a political testing ground, and people watch what's going on down there to see how it would unfold in their countries. It's very much part of the New World Order agenda, which is centralized control over the whole planet, not just within countries. So yeah, regional control, I think, is one of the ways in which you break that centralized control, whether it's just within South Africa or away from the New World Order, and that sort of pyramidal hierarchical structure. But at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to implement what you're doing without coming across a lot of conflict. And I do wish, you know, the angels or whatever look after you, because I think if you got to the point where you were actually able to implement an independent currency, you'd probably be under a lot of threat and duress, because that is when you are actually going to be making strides and actually causing some ripples. For me, that is where you're going to start seeing the shift come, is when you've got an exchange of labor, you know, barter, trade, whatever, but move away from the central reserve controlled money and actually start your own currency within your local area, whatever that is, whether you just trade with each other, whether you have an online system of points, however it's done. It's a good place to start in terms of creating some sort of autonomy within the Cape.
Yeah.
I would like to say we are heading up to the finishing stages of this interview. So, Karin, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, Jack, please just give your website, your Facebook, etc., so people can contact you, because I'm sure that there's going to be a great deal of interest in what you are trying to do. And once more, I'd really like to say again that I really give you my full backing, because somebody has to do something. And even if it's not the 100% something, it is something. And it's got to be an improvement over what is happening right now. So you have my full support. If you ever need help, please just give me a shot, because as Mel said, we will give you advertising. We will do anything you need from our point of view, because someone has to stand up and be counted, and very few people are willing to.
Thank you very much, Karin. I really appreciate it. And Mel, thank you too. It's been fantastic speaking with you guys tonight. And yeah, it's great to have people, you know, around the world, just you know, not just sitting back and allowing things to influence you, but you actually taking a stand and doing something, and both of you are doing that too. So I certainly appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
You're most welcome. All right, we're heading towards the end of the show. Jack, if you just give us where people can find out more about your campaign.
Yeah, sure. Probably the best place would be to go to our website, which is capeparty.com. On there's links to our Facebook page as well as our Twitter account. If people are on Facebook, then they can simply, in the search option, they can just type Cape Party, and we should come up. But if you need to type more, it's Cape Party, Free the Cape. And feel free to email us at capeparty.com. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And it's been great talking to you guys, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Karin, where can we find you?
RadioFreeSouthAfrica.com, both on a website and YouTube, and Radio Free South Africa on Facebook. That's me.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Jack and Karin. As always, it's a pleasure to speak to people who care so much about South Africa and who are so keen to make a change on whatever level. We all have different ideas and different experiences, but the most important thing is to know that things have to change. We can't continue down this road of death, destruction, murder, and just utter inhumanity. It's just not the way to be. It's unnatural. As you said, Jack, we are artificial in the way it has evolved. And I think really reconnecting with who we are as human beings and understanding our common purpose on this planet and uniting on our common ground, which is the pursuit of a free, peaceful, fair, just, sustainable world. That is what we need to focus on. So on that note, I'm going to end the show for tonight and say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. As always, it is a pleasure. Please do check out stopsouthafricangenocide.org. You can check out the archive of the show on ccn.media, and you can follow along with the rest of the broadcasts on CCN through our website broadcast guide, which is at consciousconsumernetwork.tv. And that's all from us tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It has been great to be with you all. Take care.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.